Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to Tech's Potential. I'm Paul Soul, CEO of the Florida High Tech Corridor, and your host. If you've watched this, you know. And this is our chance to really celebrate not only technology and innovation across the corridor here in Florida, but especially the people behind it, and let them get their spotlight and be able to share. It's just been a huge blessing, and this is going to be another one with a friend of mine on here, and I'll introduce her in a second. For a lot of you that know me, I was in the Navy for 33 years. This is our chance to celebrate veterans. And then I transitioned. And that transition was interesting. At some point, I'll tell you what that was like. We have somebody that is absolutely familiar with being part of a veteran's family, what it means to transition, and how to support that. Our guest today is no stranger to that world. Aleksandra Johnston. Aleksandra, thank you for joining us. Let me highlight just a little bit of your background because it's not only is it unique because of where you've gone, but also having a career on your own as a military spouse. She's worked internationally in public relations and project management roles, made a ton of moves throughout the world, and today she is the Deputy Director East for Hiring Our Heroes Corporate Fellowship Program. That's how we get a chance to meet, and I'll talk about that here in a second. Works to connect the military community with civilian companies to create stronger and diverse economic opportunities. Aleksandra, thanks for joining this morning, and I will share with the group when I transitioned to Florida and I heard about this program called SkillBridge. I had no idea what that was, and then as I got the chance to meet you, and that's part of your world. But before we step into hiring our heroes, tell our audience a little bit about you and your background.
Thanks, Paul. That was a beautiful introduction, and I just want to say thank you for having me here today. It's an honor to be here, and I loved meeting you for the first time. I remember our first call and feeling more encouraged and energized after I hung up with you, and that's always something you bring to the table, and with what you're doing with the corridor. And thank you for always keeping veterans in mind and for including me in this opportunity. So I want to thank you so much. And I'm excited to talk about hiring our heroes today, and certainly excited about kind of what brought us to this point. And, I love what I do in my current role, and working with the transitioning service members, military spouses, and veterans, and helping them transition in their careers into the civilian world. And in many ways, I think my whole life has led me up to this point in many ways. If you had told me 10 years ago that I would be working within this field, I would be very surprised. Skillbridge wasn't around 10 years ago, but I certainly did not know much about it. And I came to know the military community through the career of my husband, who's still active duty at the moment, getting to meet the military families through his work. And so I love that I get to work in that space myself at this point. But what brought me to this is really the transitions that I went through my entire life, both career transitions, but also kind of cultural transitions. You had mentioned a couple of countries in my past, and so I am a first generation immigrant. I came to the U.S. in 1996. That was a huge transition. I watched my parents go through that transition in their own careers. And then myself, I was a junior in high school. Mind you, 1996 is a time when the internet was certainly not what it is today. So you couldn't really research your kind of transition into the colleges and the college system in the States the way that you would do today. And so that was one of my first things I had to figure out. We were new. My parents didn't really know much about that either. And so we moved to Florida, but then I ended up going to Smith College in Massachusetts, which was fantastic, but also a transition. It's all women's college. So that was also an adjustment. And from there on, I began to work internationally in the media industry, which was a fantastic opportunity to see multiple countries, get to work in those cultures, and so that really helped me with, again, culturally transitioning from place to place. And I then came back to the U.S. And then became a military spouse, which was probably one of the biggest transitions as well. And I then started to volunteer for Hiring Our Heroes. And through that volunteering, I got to know the organization. I said, this is where I want to stay. This is exactly what I want to do. And this is where I can apply a lot of um, the skills that I have to make a meaningful impact on a lot of people. And so that's why I absolutely love waking up in the morning and doing what I do, and also working with a team that has just an incredible diverse skill set, and bring in talent to our team. And I love working in this space and with our team. So that's
Yeah.
a little bit about, yeah, a little bit about the background.
No, that's great. And so I want to, and I think the beautiful thing about it is you were in that world as a military spouse. You are now in the world of a transitioning family. So I'd never heard about this idea that a service member could actually, if they could go find a company to go work for 6 months and still be on the books on the Navy side. I'm thinking that's brilliant. Why didn't I know about it? And then getting a chance to meet you and realizing that what Hiring Our Heroes does is kind of take it to the next level where you have this cohort of companies, you've got this cohort of veterans, and kind of bringing that all together. And for the audience, I want to let you know when Alexandra and I first met, she was running that piece, and now she's got the whole sort of east of the U.S. piece. So walk us through first about what Hiring Our Heroes does, and then kind of your role in that larger national picture.
Sure. So, Hiring Our Heroes is a workforce development initiative under the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. So, we are under the nonprofit arm of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And we run several programs under the HOH umbrella. And then, as you pointed out, I sit on the Corporate Fellowship Program team. And the Corporate Fellowship Program is structured around SkillBridge, which is that DoD instruction that allows transitioning service members to do a internship in their last 180 days of active duty service. And in order to explore the private sector, in order for the private sector employer to also get to know them and their skill set, and the brilliance of this SkillBridge instruction is that they're still on the DoD payroll, as long as they have leadership approval to not report to the Army, Navy, Space Force, Air Force, Marine Corps, or now Coast Guard, and instead report to a private sector employer. So we run the program nationally. We can facilitate a what we call a fellowship anywhere across the country in every state. But we do have a team of program managers that manage programs in certain locations, where we usually have a larger number of employers that are familiar with our program. So those program managers build relationships with the local communities, or where there's a very strong interest from the transitioning service member community to move. We've noticed that our program is growing larger and larger, and we have to develop a more national approach to it. And that's been an awesome part of being on this team is just seeing the growth in this program, which is has we've been growing at about 30% year over year since the
Yeah. Does does the and I remember on being on one of the webinars with you and meeting some of the service members that were in a cohort. The first thing that was just surprising, and now it makes complete sense, is you have service members from all over. They all happen to want to come to Florida, and all the numbers are showing that, and as I've learned over time, Florida is an incredibly receptive state for veterans and the opportunities that they have. So that was one thing that caught my attention. The other thing that caught my attention, and I'd like you to speak to this, is how do companies, what kinds of companies do you have in your stable of companies? Are there primarily big ones? Do you have small companies? One of the things the corridor looks at, entrepreneurial opportunities. So give the audience a sense for, or those veterans that might be listening going, hey, I'd love to be a part of that, but I'm not sure if a company might exist that would fit my desire. Give us a sense for the kinds of companies that you have.
Sure. So we can work with any employer. So our approach to the program is, as long as there is a mutual match between the transitioning service member and the employer, we can facilitate the program. We can make that connection. And so it really comes down to the skill set matching with the hiring need of that employer. And that can take any shape, whether that is a smaller startup company, or it is one of the largest, Fortune 500 corporations that we work with. So we have a fantastic veteran employment advisory council that we meet with regularly. Those are the employers that we work with most frequently and most often and most closely with. But every cohort, and again, that number always grows from cohort to cohort. But this year, on average, we had about 300 employers across the country hosting fellows. Some of them will host 20, 30 fellows, and some of them will host just one. It just depends, again, on that hiring need and the skill set of the transitioning service members that are coming out of our program at that time. So, the most sought after skill set is certainly related to the tech industry. And so companies come to us also because the candidates have incredible experience that they can bring to the table and skill sets that they can bring to the companies.
About skill sets and as you work with companies, one thing that I remember clearly as I departed the Navy was, I don't know what skills I have, and I'm not sure if they understand what skills I have. In your cohort structure, and you're helping the vets with this matchmaking. Are there other things that you offer them, or talk us through what a cohort is like and the things that they learn?
It is a process, and our goal is to provide the path and the tools to figure this out for each individual. It is coming back to that process and the path. What I love about our programming is that it provides a very tangible path where they're on a track where they get to explore these things that are happening kind of simultaneously. The figuring out what they can do, what they should be looking for, and then we provide a lot of the tools to figure this out. I think most of all, the secret sauce at HOH are our program managers. They facilitate this process and these programs, providing a safe space where these discussions can take place, where people can open up with each other or be led by a facilitator that has a lot of experience in this space to talk about the challenges that they're facing and kind of go into that storm with somebody helping them along and coaching them along. And that's really what our program managers do, and they do this 3 times a year. So they become very experienced in being able to provide the right tool to the right at the right time. And I think another big aspect of our cohort or of our fellowship program is the network that we provide, right? And that is the biggest missing piece in any transition, right? Whether it's a career transition or a personal transition, you come into this as an unknown entity. After a 20-year career, you come into a community that doesn't know you, that doesn't know what questions to ask you. You don't have the historical background, and people don't know kind of the steps you took to become who you are. And then we're also working with a community that has a hard time talking about that, right? Transition service members tend to value humility and not really putting it all out there. And so I think what we provide is the network of people who come into the conversation recognizing that this is a person that deserves my attention, and that's, I think, a tremendous value for people going through our program, is that they're surrounded by themselves as well, right? They provide a great support system for each other as they're going through the program, and then we provide access, or just kind of facilitate the connection between a lot of employers who want to lean into this conversation. And so that's pulling people into that equation, and providing a platform for everyone to connect is really what our programs are meant to do.
Yeah, and as you described that, it hasn't been that many years, and I remember, you know, in August of 2019, and a couple of days after retirement, honestly feeling alone. It's like, what? And then you've got that little voice in your head going, "Wait, where's my next set of orders? I should be moving. What should we do?" And the ability of your team, and I love the idea of having those program managers engaged. And I think that's one of the super special secret sauces here. That these are all normal feelings, right? This is how this works. And I love the idea too, that of of not only connecting, but but helping that connection, that speed of connection, to describe for both employers as well as service members. So speaking of both, how do they, let's just talk example, how do they connect with you? And we'll put your links and everything in the supporting document. But how would if a company were listening here, how do they connect to be part of a stable of companies?
Yeah. So, most of our onboarding process is connecting with the right program manager in a location where you have a larger hiring need. And so it really starts with the contact with that program manager. And we usually just set up a virtual call to really walk through our process, explain the purpose of the program, and explain the expectations of SkillBridge itself. Right? We have Hiring Our Heroes has the MOU with the Department of Defense that allows us to facilitate this process with hundreds of employers, but our role is to make sure that the employer understands the expectations. And so sometimes it can take a while to kind of lean into the process. It is something that takes a bit of planning. The fellowship program has kind of a 2-month on-ramp where you first interview candidates for a fellowship that's going to start usually like 2 months later. And we do that in order to really expose the transitioning service members to as many opportunities as possible, to as many conversations as possible, so that once they make a decision on a opportunity to explore for that 12-week program, they base that on, okay, well, I've talked to this company, I've talked to this company, I've talked to this company, I think this is going to be the best fit for me. And they can kind of do that, figure that out mutually. But that process is lengthy. because companies usually have a hiring need from today till tomorrow. And so we really appreciate our partners in planning for it and knowing that we're going to be delivering a large set of resumes where they can count on finding, somebody for their hiring need, even though it's going to be a little further down the road. Um,
Yeah.
so companies, they can reach out through our website as well. We do have a company interest form where they just fill out, uh, where they're located or what kind of hiring needs they have, and then a program manager follows up from there to set up that call and kind of walk them through the purpose of the program and our process.
If you just go to Google, that can be daunting. No idea where to go, no idea what to do, and so that connection is hugely beneficial. How about on the family side? Is there we talk a lot about the service member, but on the spouse side, are there programs out there for the spouse as well? Because it's a family transition for sure.
Oh, absolutely. So, I came into Hiring Our Heroes largely through volunteering for the Military Spouse Professional Network. And we that is an incredible way of connecting with other uh, career-minded military spouses, and then also with employers in communities where we have these networks. Um, from there, we have an entire team that has multiple programs for military spouses. There is a military spouse fellowship program, which is based on the model of the corporate fellowship program. We said, well, we have all of these fellows going through, and we've all these employers that host transitioning service members. Why not extend that to the military spouse population? And that's been a incredibly successful opportunity for so many military spouses. They apply and go through the same process where their resume circulates with employers that are willing to listen, are willing to give that attention to that military spouse that's new in a community, does not have an established network or that historical background of who they are and what they bring to the table. And then they're hosted for 6 weeks in order for the employer and the spouse to determine whether or not there's a good long-term fit there. We also have military events that are tailored to really help spouses articulate their career paths and also to identify what they want to do, but also to connect with a network of other spouses and employers that, again, are coming to the table willing to listen. So lots of military spouse opportunities. We have our Salesforce Fellowship Program that is open to transitioning service members, veterans, and military spouses. We've had lots of success stories in all three of those kind of demographics. And we recently, well, not so much recently anymore, it's been a while now that we have our Career Forward program, which is a certification program, thanks to our partnership with Google, that also, is available to military spouses, transitioning service members, and veterans.
Yeah. So you talk a lot about and any examples that come to mind, as you're, because I get inspired all the time just talking with vets, who want to come to Florida and want to do great things, whether they're on the entrepreneur side or working for a company like Google or Amazon or Home Depot or things like that. Any any examples come to mind of a particular, success story that really made an impression on your heart?
A story that does come to mind of just the resilience and the positive attitude, and the grit of the folks that I got to work with, is a story of transitioning service member who was moving to Tampa, Florida, had kind of picked that location, not so much based on family ties or, having been here prior, but just as a great place where they finally wanted to settle. And he happened to be moving from Japan, which is where he was stationed. So he arranges for an Airbnb to be in Tampa during the fellowship, leaves his family. He had a wife and 4 children back in Japan, while kind of going out on this, on the limb and saying, okay, I'm going to try this fellowship program, and somehow get from point A to, point B, in these next 12 weeks, right? So it's a very high pressure situation where you got to figure it all out. And what makes this particularly memorable was COVID was breaking out at the time. And so that happened in the middle of his transition. And so he's at an Airbnb, the family's back in Japan. As Japan starts kind of shutting down as one of the first countries, he's over here trying to figure out where this employment opportunity is going to take him. Comes to our Friday huddle. We met every Friday, and says, Alexandra, I got to get on a plane tomorrow morning to go get my family from Japan. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's a lot going on. Works it all out with the employer, with his commander, goes to Japan, brings the family into a larger, short-term living situation, because he still didn't know whether or not he was going to get a job offer. Employers at the time weren't even sure if they were going to still hire. So I watched this guy, and he came into it with a sense of humor, with, like I said, punctual. He was on time for our Friday huddle, even though next morning he was going to fly out to Japan to move his whole family back to the States. Does it all in like under 10 days, brings the family, works everything out, delivers beyond expectations at his host company, and then gets hired. And then on top of it, after the program, networks 5 other individuals into a role at the same company. So, and did it all with a smile, and so that story stands out. But there are hundreds and thousands of others, where program managers get to kind of walk through what they're going through, and so it's always a high stake transition, right? It's always a high stake transition, but in that case, it was particularly, tumultuous.
Yeah, that's a great story, and I'm sure there are, as you said, there are hundreds out there that are like that. And as I think about, upcoming Veterans Day and what November means, and really supporting them, I just my hats off to you and the program managers and the groups that are doing this support. I think it's tremendous. Because I'm still learning to be a podcast host, is there anything that I missed? Any question you would have liked me to ask you as we close this out for today that you'd like to share with the audience?
I just want to say thank you for, like I said, for keeping our program in mind. We're always willing to provide that platform for connection between employers and transitioning service members and military spouses. And I think as we head into 2023, we're definitely preparing to be, a big part of people's career transitions. And so I just thank you very much for having me. And if there's anything, I'm happy to share my contact information and work with anybody that is part of your podcast community.
You bet, and we'll absolutely do that. Alexandra, thank you again for what you're doing. All the data shows that there are a lot of folks headed to Florida, and what you do to match opportunities, and there are opportunities all over the place. And it can be frustrating, but what you do and what your team does is great. And also, I'll be thinking about you as you go through, you and your husband go through, and family go through your own transition coming up, and making those big decisions. So thank you again for the time. For those that are listening, thanks for sticking with us. Alexandra's been a great guest. She's just a tremendous friend, and please reach out. It was news to me when I heard about it. When I got to sit in and listen to the cohorts and see the companies, big and small. They've got high tech companies that are out there that understand what veterans bring. The worst scenario is don't ask the question, don't reach out. So thanks for listening today. Thanks for what all of you do. We're excited to continue to bring these superstar guests with us to Text Potential, because the future of Florida is hugely bright. Stay tuned for the next one. Thank you, and God bless.